Well, good morning, everyone, and happy almost 4th of July. You know, this is a time when our country celebrates freedom. And one of the most famous things ever that you think about when you think of freedom is Mel Gibson in his role of Braveheart, where he talks about they can take our lives, but they can't take our freedom, right? And he screams and they go to battle. But who do they go to battle with? Let's look at the definition of freedom. I pull this straight out of, I just Google search, you get the definitions, and this is what it says freedom is. The power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Absence of subjection to foreign domination, despotic government, the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. So let me ask you this question. Is freedom being you without anyone giving you permission? What does freedom really entail? And who are we wanting to be free from? Now that was easy back in the early days of our country. We knew that the British, and they're our friends now, right? But to us, they were a despotic government, right? There was taxation without representation. There was tyranny. And who does that to you today? Right? A lot of people think, well, our government does that. Or we think our parents do that. Or we think that our church does that. And so we have this huge cry, and we want freedom. We want to be released from our chains. We want to be released from our bondage. Let's look at those words just a little bit. The power or right to act, speak, or thinks as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Think about that for a second. What would that involve, and what would life be like if that were true for you? I won't say it's one of my favorite shows, but it is a show that I watch. Last Man on Earth. I don't know if you're familiar with that show or not, but this is a story where there was a virus that spread all over the earth, and everybody died except this one guy. At least that's kind of how the first season went. And you would see in the show that he would do all sorts of weird things. And these are just a few scenes from the show. But he could do anything he wanted. He could break into a grocery store. He could get guns and blow up stuff. He had this one deal down there at the bottom where he would just pick up cars and he would run them into each other just to see them explode. And that's what freedom really is. There's nobody to stop him. There's no restraint. He can do whatever he wants anytime he wants. But guess what? In order to do that, you have to be completely alone. Because otherwise what happens is my freedom tends to interfere with your freedom. And where does my freedom stop? Some people will say that my freedom stops right at the tip of the next person's nose. What really is freedom? I had a fellow that I worked for once upon a time, and he loved to work with Christians. And he said the reason he loved to work with Christians is because they had a defined set of rules and regulations to live by. And he always knew where they were going to be and how they were going to behave. He said, because then I can do whatever I want. It's like playing a game, a board game or a card game with someone, and you always know what their next move is going to be. And you take advantage of that idea, and you're able to beat the system just a little bit. And you're able to advantage yourselves at the same time when using that freedom, you're disadvantaging someone else. Most of the time in America, we think about our freedoms. Look at the eye of that eagle. Think about that just for a second. Is that the eye that we have? That piercing, gazing, defiant look that we have. And certainly in our Continental Congress, when we came up with our Declaration of Independence, we had this idea that we are a people that should be free from the tyranny that is our parent company, our parent organization, our parent government over in Great Britain. And so we came up with this declaration. I don't know if you can read the words there very well. When in the course of human history it becomes necessary for people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them. Think about that for a second. We're filing for divorce. We don't want to have this person ruling over us anymore. We don't want to have this government ruling over us anymore. We hold these truths to be self-evident. You have to skip down quite a ways to find this at the tail end. That all men are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Freedom is not mentioned there. Because you know what? It's interesting that when we threw off the government of Great Britain, and as any country, it's interesting, as we've been on vacation, we've gone to a lot of these little island countries. The Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Bahamas, all these countries have thrown off their original rulers, right? And they formed their own country. Well, guess what they did? Now, this is just what you get when you Google how many laws are there. And this is old. There are about 20,000 laws just governing the use of gun ownership. New laws mean new crimes. Between 2000 and 2007, Congress had created at least 452 new crimes, which means there's 452 new laws that year. So that at the time, the crime total number of crimes, 4,450. Of course, these things change and laws are updated. And look at what it says there. How many federal laws are there? No one really knows. We throw off one despot to accept another despot. And so what we have in our country right now is we have turmoil within our own country, within the United States, of thinking we need to throw off the current government we have, the current society we have, and we need to form a new society within ourselves. Right? And think about it, the Revolutionary War wasn't the first or only war that our country's had like that. Look at the Civil War, how our country fought amongst itself. And we're sort of headed that way again when we have half of the country believes we should live this way and the other half of the country believes we should live that way. How do we decide who we're going to follow? And here's some more of that definition. Absence of subjection to foreign domination or despotic government. The state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Where did that idea come from? The idea that we needed to be free from something. I want to take you all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, to the book of Genesis. God said to Adam and Eve, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but the one that's in the middle of the garden. God knew that that was the only place that Satan could attack, the only place that Satan could try to influence. So he said, you know what? Don't go there. So often in life, we find that there's such a rebellious spirit in each of us that when we're told, you know, you can do anything you want except that one thing. And what's the one thing that we feel we have to do? Yeah. The one thing that we're told we shouldn't do. Or in some cases, what? You can't do that. If you ever want to get really good at manipulating somebody, right, one of the things you need to practice is how to say, well, you know, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you're ready for that. I don't think you should do that. And the best one, parents, we all know this with our children. I forbid you to do that. I forbid you to hang around with that person, to see that person. What is the one thing that does to your child when that happens? It drives them to that thing. And you know what? When God said you can eat from any tree but this one, I think there was a piece of Eve that just drew her to that tree and said, what's so special about that tree? And it happens to us when we're very young, and I intentionally picked a very innocent-looking girl picking an apple. Because Satan came to her at that point and said, you will not certainly die. For God knows that when you eat from this tree, your eyes will be open and you will be like God. Isn't that what we all want to be like? We all want to have that freedom. We want to be out of our cage. We want to be set free. We want to be able to do whatever we want, however we want. And as the wonderful people we are, we want to give that to other people. Now, I tried to include a little video here, and I hope it shows up. And it's not going to show up. So never mind. We'll skip ahead to the next slide then. It won't let me do it.
The video is probably loading.
Maybe Okay, so I'm going to do it. It's a video, you can find it on YouTube, about a guy who has this mouse in his house. And this mouse has sort of become a friend of his, but at some point, you realize you really don't want a mouse in your house. So he catches the mouse. And instead of killing the mouse, he decides to set the mouse free. So this video, and it's only about a minute long, he takes this mouse out to the woods and he sets it free. And the mouse scurries on along, and not 30 seconds later, a hawk comes down and grabs the mouse. We have to be careful when we think about freedom, because there is someone out there trying to get us. The devil goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. You've heard me say that before. But look at Zephaniah, a little bitty book in the Old Testament, right? In her pride, she won't listen to the voice of God. No one can tell her anything. She refuses all corrections. She does not trust the Lord, nor seek her God. Now, of course, this is talking about the nation of Israel, not talking about women. We're not trying to be sexist in anything we say here. But how often do we understand, and maybe even feel that way ourselves just a little bit? No one's going to tell me what to do. It's my life. I can do whatever I want with it. Right? Here's the thing that I'll tell us. No man is an island. All of our actions have consequence, have sort of a ripple effect. We've all done that, where you go out to the lake and you pick up a stone and you skip it. And so every once in a while you take this giant stone and you throw it in there. There's always ripples. Read on in Zephaniah a little bit. Her peers are like roaring lions, hunting for their victims, out for everything that they can get. Her friends are like ravenous wolves at evening time, who by dawn have left no trace of their prey. I took pictures of runaway girls. And it's not because it's necessarily about girls, but because the verse started with girls, so Anyway, how many times do we do that? We run away from the despotic government that is our parents, or is our church, or is the life that we have. And we go out there, we pick up new friends, new people in our peer group, and we say, I'm going to listen to these guys. And at the same time, so many people in life are out there just trying to get what they can get for themselves and take advantage of you in the process. But there's a promise here. But the Lord is there within the city. The Lord's there within your life. And He does no wrong. Day by day, His justice is revealed. You can see God. You can see that God is good. But look at how it ends. But no one listens. So let me answer this question. Freedom from what? Freedom from who? Let's look back at that definition of freedom just again. And I'm going to highlight some words, and then I'm going to eliminate some words so that we can get maybe a different idea of what freedom really is. It's the power or right to act, speak, think, as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Absence of subjection to foreign domination or despotic government. A state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Now let's remove a few words. The power without hindrance or restraint. Absence of subjection, foreign domination, despotic government, imprisonment or enslavement. Skip a few more words out of there. The power without hindrance or restraint. The absence of subjection, domination, government, no longer imprisoned or enslaved. What does that start to sound like to you? Doesn't that start to sound like what Satan promised Eve in the garden? You will be like gods. You will know the difference between right and wrong, good and evil. You will have full knowledge, full power. And isn't that what we all are looking for in life? We're all looking for more power. We want to have ultimate authority to make everybody else do what we want. And where does that ultimate authority go? Satan's first lie. For God knows the day you eat thereof, you shall have your eyes open, and you shall be His God. In our life, we have to choose who we want to serve. And back in Joshua 24:15. If it seems evil unto you to serve the Lord, if you don't think God is a nice guy, if that seems bad to you, choose you today who you're going to serve. Whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in which land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. We all reach these crossroads in life where we have to decide, are we going to go this way or are we going to go that way? In the movie The Matrix, the main star, Keanu Reeves, is offered a choice. It's the red pill or the blue pill. Now, I know this illustration falls on deaf ears to some. But for some of you, it's a very apt illustration. Red pill, blue pill. You decide. See, there's no walking the fence. We like to think that we can just kind of ride right down the middle. We're not conservative, we're not liberal, we're not heathens, we're not Christians. We're just going to ride right down the middle. But in life, it's sort of heads or tails. You know, how often have you flipped a coin and had it fall right down on the edge and stay there? That happens all the time, doesn't it? See, we kind of think that there's a gray area that we can live in. We're not right, we're not wrong, but we're going to live in this gray area. And some people will tell you that the gray area is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, it probably is, because more people are voting for non-commitment. I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to this. I'm not going to that. You know, we're going to, and I have nobody in mind when I say that. I'm just saying, we're afraid of commitment. We're not going to commit to God. We're not going to commit to Satan. We're going to live right on the fence. God addressed this situation in Revelation. He said, I know your deeds. I know that you're not hot, you're not cold. I wish that you were one or the other. Why would God wish that you were one or the other? See, the thing about lukewarm is that seems comfortable. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not really fond of cold showers. And I'm not really fond of hot showers. I kind of like this sort of right in the middle. Let me ask you this. I am not a coffee drinker. I am not a tea drinker. But I do know that coffee comes in hot and ice. And I kind of know that nobody likes the coffee that's warm. I've been in many restaurants and had somebody say, will you heat up my coffee? Right? And I know tea is sort of the same way. People like iced tea and people like hot tea. How many people like tea that's just sort of in the middle? Right? God even says that because you're not hot, because you're not cold, I'm going to spew you out of my mouth. Now, does that mean that God doesn't love you? Does that mean God doesn't have anything for you? I think the reason that God says, I wish that you were hot or cold, is because those are people I can work with. If you're cold, if you're distant from me, I can come up with a strategy for working with you, to draw you to me. If you're hot, if you're on fire for me and you love me, yeah, I can work with that too. But if you're self-satisfied, if you don't feel any sort of a need for me, how can I work with that? Self-examination, James 1:25. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in that law of liberty, and does not be a forgetful hearer, but also a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in all he does. Just like I was mentioning this morning in our little Bible study time about my cell phone. If you follow the manufacturer's instructions, you're going to get a lot farther in the use of that cell phone. If you had a relationship with the inventor of the cell phone, I'm sure you would know all the little tricks. I remember back to when my children were young, when Nintendos first came out. What are we on, like the 7th or 8th generation Nintendos? But anyway, there were magazines that would come out that would tell you all the secret little places. Remember, you're holding down the buttons and your little Mario is running along. And I would run along and I would fall down in the cracks. Well, what my kids learned, and I don't know if they learned it from these little magazines that told about all the tricks, but there were places that you could jump up and you would get either bonus points or you would get like a little sky hook or something to carry you. I didn't know that. Right? And the same is true in the life that we live. There are little places where we need to follow a different pathway and not just run off that cliff. But we don't know about those pathways because nobody's told us. We don't have a relationship with the inventor. We haven't read the instructions. We haven't bought the magazine. But just like our Continental Congress, we know that what we have isn't right. And we know we want something different. Because in our hearts we feel that we are living under a despotic government. You know what a despotic government is, right? You know what a despot is. If we look at some third world countries, and I don't want to name countries for fear of offending someone, but so often, and after all, people think that our country is run by a despot right now too. Half the country does. Anyway, a despot is someone who is only out for themselves and only interested in using everybody else to further their gains. I find it interesting. There's a country in South America, and we watched a little video on that. I think it was one of our mission stories even, about how poor the country was and how people would have to stand in line for hours to get into a grocery store. And then when they got into the grocery store, there might not be any food. At the same time, the leaders of that government have fancy yachts and mansions and things like that. The country is very rich with oil, and they sell that oil all over the world. But who gets that money? Does everybody get that money? Are there good schools and hospitals and everything else? The people suffer because they have a despot running their country. He's a dictator, and he wants everything for himself. And the same is true in the choice that we have to make. We have a choice to make between Satan and between God. We have on one hand a despot who wants to control our lives in a way to enrich themselves. The trouble is, we've been so confused that we're not sure which is which. We have not tasted to see that the Lord is good. We have not believed God when He said that I am love. We have believed Satan's lies when Satan came to Eve in the garden, comes to us every day, and says, he lied to you. He's trying to infringe on your freedom. Here, take and eat of this. Then you'll be just like God. You'll have everything you've ever wanted. I would like to wish each of us a safe and happy 4th of July. But as we think about the freedom that our country has gained and the freedom that we all want, I want you to more closely examine what freedom really means. And what are we trying to be free from? Sometimes we're trying to throw off the shackles of our parents and our parents' religions. And for what? Just so that we can do a few things that we know that our parents and our church wouldn't approve of? Just to prove that we're independent? To our own loss? Sometimes, and I gotta say, I didn't think my dad was right about a lot of things. In fact, there were times in my life when I felt my dad wasn't very smart even. But as I grew older, I realized that a lot of things my dad said had wisdom. And I think that's true for all of us as we go through life. We don't necessarily see the wrong in what we're doing until we're 40, 50 years old. And then all of a sudden it comes as, wow, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I wouldn't have followed that path. But now it's too late. Anyway, have a safe and happy